All right, aloha kako. Good evening and welcome back. My name is James Eustace and I'm the president of the Waimea Community Association. Thank you for joining us online tonight for our virtual Lieutenant Governor Candidate Forum. This evening, we'll be hearing from 6 candidates seeking your support in our state primary election on August 13th. And last week, we held our gubernatorial candidate forum, which is now available up on our YouTube channel in case you missed it. I encourage you to follow, like, and subscribe to the Waimea Community Association on our social accounts. You may also find relevant information and resources up on our website at waimeatown.org. We do strive to keep our accounts active and up to date. This evening, we're streaming both to YouTube and Facebook, and this will be also available for later viewing, made available for later viewing. And at this point, I would like to recognize our WCA board members, our Vice President, Mary Beth Lachek, our Treasurer, Jeremy Madrid, our Secretary, Nancy Carr-Smith, and our directors, Patty Cook, Michael Donnelly, David Greenwell, Lonnie Olson-Chung, and Riley Smith. The WCA board is grateful for the support shown by the community to hold these forums. And the Waimea Community Association is a nonprofit organization that strives to promote open participation by all of the Waimea community, develop leadership, and support the smart growth of the region. And if you'd like to support the work that we have done and help continue our effort in connecting with our community, you're more than welcome to donate and join as a member. You can visit our website, waimeatown.org, for more information about this, or send us an email at waimeacommunityassociation@gmail.com for more information. Your contributions and membership allow us to reach out and connect with the community in this setting, and of course, support the work that WCA has done over the past 60 years. Mahalo nui for your support. And as mentioned, tonight we'll be hearing from 6 lieutenant governor candidates, and we're grateful to be joined by Keith Amemiya, Ikaika Anderson, Tae Kim, Sylvia Luke, Sherry Menor-McNamara, and Seaula Tupa'i. Candidates for our forum this evening met 2 criteria. First, that they have to have filled out their nomination papers by the filing deadline. And second, that candidates submitted a disclosure report through the Campaign Spending Commission. And then candidates were invited based upon the date that they submitted their nomination papers, and were able to select from available time slots for this evening on a first come, first served basis. The candidates will be calling in throughout the evening, joining us for a 2-minute self-introduction. And after the self-introduction, candidates will be then asked a series of questions during a 16-minute period. These questions have been submitted ahead of time by community members. We do apologize if your specific question was not asked or an interest of yours was not addressed this evening. But we have done our best to capture a wide range of topics, and we hope that the questions asked the candidates during this forum better informs your decision-making during this year's election process. If you do have an inquiry of the candidates and we were unable to get to it, we do encourage you to ask that candidate directly or their campaign. And of course, thank you for taking the time to submit your questions to the Waimea Community Association and really helping to make this Q&A portion community-driven. And then following this question and answer portion, candidates will be given 1 minute to give any closing remarks. Candidates will be timed and a bell will sound when their time expires. And candidates have been encouraged to keep their answers concise and direct for the benefit of them answering more of the community-generated questions. All candidates will have the opportunity to answer the same questions, time permitting, and each candidate will be on the video conferencing call for about 20 minutes, after which they will be dismissed. And tonight, I will be joined by a couple of my WCA board members, Lonnie Olson-Chung and Riley Smith, as they assist in presenting the questions to the candidates. We are also grateful for the support and have the support of the League of Women Voters this evening. Rosemarie Muller, Vice President of the Hawaii State League of Women Voters and a Director of the Hawaii County League of Women Voters, will provide important information about the voting process in 2022. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that works to protect and expand voting rights, ensuring that everyone is represented in our democracy. And through advocacy, education, and litigation, the League of Women Voters actively empowers and engages voters across the country. Mahalo nui, Rosemarie, and to the League for your support in connecting with and assisting voters in our communities. Thank you for joining us. So really to start things off here, I'd like to welcome in Rosemarie Muller to share with us some key items about our election process and information about a great resource to help you learn more about candidates. Welcome, Rosemarie.
I want to thank the Waimea Community Association for giving us the opportunity to talk about voting and about the 2022 elections. I'm going to briefly cover register to vote, ways to vote in Hawaii, important dates, and something new in 2022, and where you can get election information. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, if you've moved or you've changed your name and you haven't received one of these yellow postcards, or it's been 4 years since you last voted, you may need to re-register to vote, and it's easy to re-register or to register for the first time. You can do it online if you have a Hawaii ID or a driver's license. You can get a paper application from the county elections office, or they're also off online. You can mail it in, or you can stop at the elections office to drop it off. Or we are going to be holding 3 WikiWiki voter registrations at 3 different sites, one in Hilo, one in Pahoa, one in Kona, on August 2nd and on August 3rd. And you can also register before you vote in person. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. You can vote in person on election day and the 10 days before the election, except Sundays at 2 locations, West Hawaii Civic Center and the Hawaii County Apuna Center. And they'll have electronic voting machines available for accessible voting. Lines may be long, as they were in 2020, so make sure you give yourself plenty of time to vote. You can vote by mail. Could you put the next slide up, please, James? I'm sorry. You can vote by mail. Registered voters in Hawaii will get a ballot in the mail, probably around July 26th. For your ballot to be counted, it must be received by 7 p.m. on election day. So make sure you mail early or go to one of the drop boxes on the island. There'll be 9 drop boxes on the island, or at the 2 voter service centers, one on the east side and one on the west side. Next slide, please. Okay. Okay. Now let's talk about the ballot. You need to place your ballot in the secrecy sleeve and then place that in the return envelope, and make sure you sign the outside of the envelope. Your signature enables election officials to verify you as the voter. If you make a mistake, you can actually contact the County Office of Elections to get a replacement. If your signature doesn't match, you'll be notified within 5 days. Next slide, please. Register vote by August 3rd to get a mail ballot for the August 13 primary, because that is the deadline. You have to make sure you get it there by 7 o'clock. Okay. Next slide. These are the important dates. You'll receive your primary election ballot on July 26th. The voter service centers and the 9 drop-box locations will be open on August 1st to the 13th. And let's say if you're going to be away from Hawaii during the primary, you can request an absentee ballot, and you have to request it by August 6th. Next slide, please. This is what's new for 2022. You can actually track your mail ballot. You can sign up to get a text, an email, or a voice alert where you mailed your ballot is. And to sign up, you can just go to hawaii.ballottracks.next. Next slide, please. Okay. There are 400 candidates running in 165 races this year, and Hawaii County voters will see 11 races on their primary ballot. So to see your ballot, the League of Women Voters has an online voter guide, Vote 411. It's a one-stop shop for elections. There are links for voter registration, announcements of candidate forms, and you can also see who you will be voting for. The League invited every candidate that had a phone number or email address to participate in this online voter guide. Next slide, please. If you have any questions, you can contact us at our voicemail or check our website, and just hope to see you at the ballot box. Thank you.
Wonderful. Mahalo, Rosemarie. Thank you so much. Thank you for really taking the time to update our viewers, and grateful for your time this evening and your efforts in empowering our voters. So really grateful to have a partnership with Legal Women Voters. Thank you so much. All right. So at this time, I would like to welcome our first candidate of the evening, Mr. Seaula Jr. Tupa'i. Welcome, Mr. Tupa'i. You may begin your 2-minute self-introduction. Please take it away.
Awesome. Aloha. Thank you so much for the opportunity just to be with you guys. My name is Junior Tupa'i. Yes, I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. Currently, I am a senior pastor of a local church in the Big Island. Before that, I was working for the Hawaii National Guard Youth Challenge Academy as an instructor from the inception up at Kulani, the old prison, moving down to KMR. At the same time, I was coaching football for a local high school, Hilo High, for about 9 seasons. And for the past 8 months, I've been teaching constitutional rights from the Hawaii State Constitution, United States Constitution. And that's pretty much when I announced that I'm going to run for Lieutenant Governor. And I just saw a lot of disconnect with those in office and with those in the community. In the end, what is that? The people in office are trustees and servants. Trustees are people appointed and required by law to execute a trust, and the true trust documents that these people in office swore to, Article 16, Section 4 of our state constitution, was to the United States Constitution and Hawaii State Constitution, which is to support and defend life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And in the end, whatever iteration that is for legislative policies or regulations, I want to make sure that actually lines up with what the people want. We've been a one-party system for the past 5-6 decades. And so Einstein said insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. So my platform is pretty much individual freedoms, faith, and family. I'm for the Second Amendment. I believe the Second Amendment protects the First Amendment, every other amendment. I'm also for making Hawaii affordable. And I support law enforcement, support military, whatnot. In the end, our state motto, Umao Ke'e o Ka'aini Kapono, the life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. So I feel like we need a two-party system. We need to bring balance back into our state. Otherwise, it's going to keep going in a direction that many of the people I've experienced in dialogue with in the community, from small businesses to families, they do not like. So with that said, I'll land it there. Thank you again.
And thank you, Mr. Tupa'i. All right. So for this next portion of the agenda, Riley, our board member, is going to present to community-generated questions. We have portioned out 16 minutes for you to move from one question to the next, and really it's your benefit to answer as many questions as you're able to. So Riley, please take it away.
All right, thank you very much, James. Mr. Tupa'i, aloha, how are you doing this evening?
Aloha, Riley, doing awesome. Thank you very much.
Would you like me to call you Seaula or Junior?
Junior's fine.
Okay, sounds good, I'll do that. So getting right into the questions, the first question we have is concerning the role of the Lieutenant Governor. Although the Lieutenant Governor stands in for the governor during any absence, the day-to-day responsibilities of the LG are not very specific. What is your view of what the Lieutenant Governor's job is?
When I met with Duke Iona, it depends on who I pair with the gubernatorial candidate. Whatever they delegate to me, a lot of that will be incumbent upon what they give to me for my purview as far as, and I heard a lot of times, most of the time, they'll give you pretty much duties that are more or less desirable, say homelessness or the rail or housing or something where you can oversee something of that nature. Some people think it's a ceremonial duty. I don't think so. I think you've seen it over the past 2 years with Josh Green and also with, Governor Ige, when they work side by side, actually, there is some plenary power where they can use as lieutenant governor. But I've already spoken to all the gubernatorial candidates. I could work with any of them, whatever they delegate to me. They all have their own ideas of what they see coming into it.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate it. Next one is concerning the collaboration with the governor. In our state, the gubernatorial candidate with the most votes is paired with the lieutenant governor candidate with the most votes. They do not campaign as a team, if at all, till after the primary election in August. What is your perception of how you will effectively work with a successful candidate for governor in order to best serve the people of Hawaii?
I think you said it right there at the end. What's best to serve the people? To me, I've had this question before. We get so much more done if we don't care who gets the credit. I think that was Don Shula, the old head coach of the Miami Dolphins. So to me, I've spoken with several of the gubernatorial candidates, actually all of them, and I was told them, which they felt the same way. You know, we have to put the interests of the people first, not special interest groups, not, foreign interests. And when I say foreign, I don't mean just China or Russia or Ukraine or Japan. I'm talking about San Francisco or Seattle or LA, anything that does not exist here on the geographical soil of these islands. So for us, that's what I loved about dialogue with all the gubernatorial candidates, that they're willing to give me, power to do certain things. In the end, yes, I will defer to them because, yeah, I want to get stuff done. And sometimes you have to find alliances or agreement or compromises with whoever I'm paired with. So I'm a team player. I could play nice with others. Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Junior. Next question concerns the Lieutenant Governor priorities. How do you hope to personalize the role of the Lieutenant Governor's office? Are there specific issues or programs you would hope to prioritize?
First, I'll answer the first one first. Personalized. I want to make it as transparent as possible with the community. The people should know. There should be full disclosure on what's going on. I feel like in every asset, in every platform that we have in the executive branch, whatever my purview will be, and I'll be delegated, I want to let the people know what's going on. And I feel like people sometimes, they don't really know the ins and outs. Maybe over the past 2 years, they knew more of the ins and outs as far as it pertains to, like, say, COVID or the pandemic, things of that nature. But I want to use that in every stratosphere that we have that I'm going to be involved with. As far as making it more effective, I feel like if I can bring in people, because sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are other templates out there that actually work. All it is finding the right variables in the equation to put those people, empower them, delegate to where these things can function. I think to the utmost, that's what I feel like I'm great at. I know how to see different problems, but there's always a technology within the problem called the solution, and delegating and making sure the right people that are subject matter experts that can handle these type of things to optimize, pretty much what we're going to be in there for, to serve the people in the end.
Sounds good. Related question, Junior. So do you have any political experience to date?
Yes. So political experience. I am not a politician. I consider myself a statesman. A politician will tend to think about the next election. They're more populist. They'll go what's popular at the time. A statesman thinks about the next generation. They'll choose the harder right or the easier wrong and what's popular. So for me, I'm asked that before. I said, what qualified a Hawaiian Airlines pilot to be a United States Senator? What qualified a real estate agent to be a representative? They saw a need and they put their name on the ballot. That's all I'm doing.
Okay, sounds good. Appreciate your clear answers.
Yes,
Next question concerns the cost of living. And I believe you're a resident of Hawaii Island, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what are your thoughts about the skyrocketing cost of living here that is severely impacting many island residents and forcing them to move away?
Yes, that's been a thing for years now. I know that the price median for a house, for example, was $800,000 before COVID. And after 2 years later, it's at 1.2 to 1.5 million. The regular 9-to-5, worker cannot afford that. Matter of fact, the church that I pastor, I have an auntie that lives in the homestead in Panayeva, and she got off the wait list, but she was given a turnkey house in Panayeva. But it was $400,000. She can't even afford that. So most of these people can't afford that. I know the cost of living is also affecting the homelessness issue here in Hawaii as well. I'll probably tackle that later. Probably have another question. I'll leave that alone for now. The affordability, I see a lot of that with is going to be, I know they want to raise the minimum wage to $18 an hour by 2026. The issue with that I see is that everything else is going to come up to match that. We need to bring the cost of living down. So especially for our state, we're the second highest tax state. Like you said earlier, over the past 2 years, we've had over 21,000 families leave Hawaii. That is the highest immigration rate out of any of the 50 states. So we need to retain that. We need to have incentives for the families here. I believe there's too much. I think Winston Churchill said it best, and then I'll segue into something else. He said, trying to tax a state or a nation into prosperity is like a man standing in a bucket trying to lift himself by the handle of that bucket. We have so many regulations, excessive policies. let me give you a case in point. There was several small business owners. They talked to me. They said, Junior, we're on the neighbor island. Our property tax was $9,000. Now it's $13,000 after 2 years because of the rail tax. None of the neighbor islands benefit from this. So all these different things that people are being burdened with that don't even affect them directly. We need to somehow start to look at and reevaluate all these things. We need to have, we need to have some audits on some of this stuff to actually see what is actually benefiting Hawaii, the entire islands, not just one Oahu centric. It needs to, all these different things they've been pushing needs to consider the neighbor islands as well, which I'll probably go into later. So I'll stop right there.
All right. Thank you, Junior. Kind of a related question. So are you familiar with the transit accommodations tax?
Very vaguely.
Okay. In a nutshell, the legislature originally passed this. The intent was that the funds generated from that would be used on each island to support the impacts of tourism on each of their islands. The legislature since then has changed the intent, the use of those funds, and now they all go to Oahu. And none of the outer islands receive any of the TAT funds for all of the impacts that tourism on our island create. Is that something that you think is fair, you would do something about, or what's your position on that?
That's definitely unfair. Me being from a neighbor island as well, I resonate with all the neighbor islands because it's, like I said earlier, it seems so Oahu centric. The fact that they're going to take all those taxes and give it back to Oahu only, no, that needs to be reevaluated, revisited. Matter of fact, they need to strike that, and they need to actually look to actually dispense that back to the neighbor islands. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Junior. Next question regards agriculture and food security. Especially during COVID, I think one of the things was clear that as supply chain issues impacted all of us, it became obvious that the more that we can do to grow and support the food needs within our state, the better we'll all be. And also it would reduce the cost of living. So are you a supporter of diversified ag, especially on Hawaii Island? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, sir. I'm definitely a supporter of diversified ag. I've been looking at talking to different people within, say, the community as far as ag, Go Farm. We didn't see these different platforms that use these things. 100 years ago, we were self-sustainable. Hawaii was self-sustainable. We didn't need anything here. Now I think 90% everything needs to be exported. Like this, I think our greatest export now is scrap metal. Like something's wrong with this. We have the perfect climate to be year round, to have agriculture from edible foods. Like why are we getting our fruits, our vegetables from other, states, other countries? The other thing that's big for me is like the Jones Act. Why are we, that's going to bring down, that's a whole nother, I know it's a federal level, but that's something that we as the executive branch need to work in conjunction with Congress, with the senator, to actually reevaluate that thing. But for us here in Hawaii, we need to be self-sustainable. From ag to even, this is a big thing I've been looking at indirectly with education. We need to bring back vocational schools, but make them conducive to, say, for example, in Molokai, they're more ag centered. So have vocational things as it pertains to farmers, whether irrigation, whether planting crops, the different cycles that they use, and teach the kids to where they have an affinity for that again, as opposed to teaching them, whether I get it. You want to be, digital natives. You want to be able to use the iPad, the different apps, you want to move forward. But at the same time, we cannot let go of the past. That's the issue I see with some of the schools, where a lot of these vocational programs, so within each respective island, have a vocational program that instills that intrinsic value back into the keiki that's coming up, so that, especially as it pertains to ag, whether in certain parts of Big Island, there's fish ponds, we can start to malama that again and bring that in, because some of those concepts can actually move us maybe in, 15, 20 years. Those can be things that can actually make us self-sustainable again on a larger scale, but we have to plant the seeds now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Junior. Related question, similar to food security, we import most of our energy needs. What is your position on alternative energy? and specifically with Hawaii Island having to do with geothermal.
Yes. I'm going to digress and I'll come back. I just drew a blank. You said with energy.
Yeah, specifically energy, whether it's wind, photovoltaic, but, the base load on this island is probably provided 25, 30% by geothermal. So specifically with Hawaii Island, what's your position on geothermal?
I'm open to exploring all types of energies. We have to look. I know people are saying solar power, wind power. You saw what happened in Texas with the windmills. They malfunctioned. That whole state, part of that state shut down. I know with solar power, I know a lot of the rare earth materials are owned by certain countries. So they have a bigger hold on that, just looking geopolitically. So those are things, but we need to explore all these different mechanisms to produce energy here. I know that 33% of our oil was coming from Russia because of the Jones Act, which powered all the generators here that actually produced, the electricity. And ever since Biden sanctioned Russia, now it's affecting, us. I've had a lot of small business owners tell me, why is my electricity going up 15, 20%? It's exactly because of that. Ever since the sanctions happened here in Hawaii, everything's going up. But we do need to explore whether biodiesel, whether, wind power, solar power, and not just explore, but actually best practices. I believe there are other countries, other cities, other locales that have actually already have something in place that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We simply need to take those templates and institute it here. But we need people that actually have the vision and the sight to see these things and to begin to bring them in here into Hawaii.
Okay, thank you, Junior. I think we're kind of getting close to the end, so let me just kind of touch on a couple other topics. One has to do with astronomy. So astronomy is an industry on Hawaii Island especially that has a minimal footprint, but brings in a lot of dollars from off the island. So what is your position on astronomy and specifically the 30-meter telescope?
I love astronomy. I believe in science. I love science. At the same time, with the 30-meter telescope, if they're going to put something else new in, clean up what they already have there. If you're going to take something off, you made a promise, take it off first. Honor your word. Men and women are only as good as the word that they give. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good, Junior. I'm going to tie into the last question here. And if we have more time, we can get into others. Please share one specific thing, such as a project or service that you helped start or have dedicated a lot of time to, that you think demonstrates or clarifies why residents should support you as Lieutenant Governor.
Yes. Like I said earlier, whether coaching football as a coach, whether an instructor as a youth challenge, helped from that inception, an at-risk youth program dealing with 16, 18-year-old high school dropouts, drug dealer, gangbanger types, changing their lives around to where they can go, whether going to the workforce, going to the military, going to college, or whether being a pastor or lieutenant governor. It's always been, the title just shows the jurisdiction that you serve. So as lieutenant governor, it's just a bigger broom, a bigger shovel to serve more people. But all those different iterations have always been about one thing, serving. And that's the biggest thing that I think I bring to the table. In the end, those people in office should resonate and reflect the will of the people, not our own agendas or private special interest groups. It should be the people. And that's what I feel I bring. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Junior.
You're welcome.
Just one related question. So people that know you, would they call you a more of a person in the spotlight or more of a person as a hard worker? What would your friends characterize you as?
Hard worker. Yeah.
Okay. That's the impression I got. I just thought I'd let you say that. Thank you very much. I think James is going to carry on the end of this. Junior, thank you. Aloha.
Aloha. Thank you, Riley.
Thank you, Riley. And thank you, Junior. So I'm going to give you one more minute here to make any closing remarks you'd like to share with the audience. So please take it away. Thank you.
Yes. I think JFK said it best. He said, let us not seek a Republican answer or a Democratic answer, but the right answer. Let us not seek to fix the blame for the past. Let us accept our responsibility for the future. I think our responsibility for the future is to put Hawaii first, put the keiki first. And all these other, regulations and policies that they've been passing, it does not benefit immediately and directly the people of Hawaii. And that's something that I want to bring into change when I come in as Lieutenant Governor. VoteTupa'i.com, that's my website. Once again, Junior Tupa'i, Lieutenant Governor. Thank you again, mahalo, for the opportunity to speak with you all today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Tupa'i. Really appreciate you joining us here this evening. Wish you all the best. You have a nice evening. Aloha.
Aloha, mahalo.
Wonderful. Okay, great to meet these candidates here. We're having our next candidate sign in here as well. All right. How we doing? Looking pretty good. All right, there he is. Welcome, Mr. Anderson. So I'll have you unmute yourself there, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes to present a self-introduction. So please take it away.
Aloha, ahi ahi kako. Thank you so much, James and the Waimea Community Association, for the opportunity to talk story with you folks this evening. I am Ikaika Anderson. I'm a lifelong resident of rural Windward, Oahu. Was born to an 18-year-old single mom. From the age of 2, my mom's parents, my maternal grandparents, hanaid me and legally raised me as their son. I'm a graduate of the Kamehameha schools, went on to the University of Hawaii at Manoa, where I earned 2 degrees, one in political science and one in public relations and journalism. I'm a single dad of 4 keiki. I live in a multi-generational household. My kupuna who raised me live right across the lawn from me. I help with their day-to-day needs as one of their primary caregivers. My Pop Whitney is a former state lawmaker, leader in the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs on a state level. My Tutu Hani is a pioneer in women's sports, where she helped to found the Molokai Nawahine o Kekai canoe race. It's really my kupuna who instilled public service into my own heart. I served for 11 years in the Honolulu City Council. A year and a half of that time as chair. I'm the only elected executive running for the office of Lieutenant Governor. As a council chair, I was responsible for a 150 employee branch of government. Decisions stopped on my desk every single day. I've also had the great opportunity to represent Honolulu on the Hawaii State Association of Counties, where I made many friendships across Hawaii. And neighbor islanders, not outer islanders, neighbor islanders have become my friends. And I've come to understand your communities and work with you. As Lieutenant Governor, I will ensure that we forge a solid representation on the neighbor islands. I look forward to this evening's discussion, and mahalo nui in advance for having me on. Thank you again.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. So I'm going to pass it right over to Riley, and he's going to jump right into the questions here with you. So Riley, please take it away.
Sounds good. Aloha, Ikaika. How are you doing?
Aloha, very well. Thank you. Mahalo nui again for the opportunity.
You're welcome. You okay if I call you Ikaika, Mr. Anderson? What do you prefer?
Ikaika, please.
Okay, sounds good. I like that too. All right, first question. This regards the role of the Lieutenant Governor. Although the Lieutenant Governor stands in for the governor during any absences, the day-to-day responsibility of the LG are not very specific. What is your view of what the Lieutenant Governor's job is?
The Lieutenant Governor, to give a sports analogy of the job, is the starting running back on the team. The Lieutenant Governor, the governor himself or herself, is the starting quarterback. I'm used to that role. I was a vice chair of the Honolulu City Council for more than 6 years, serving 3 different chairs who had different personalities and leadership styles. It is going to be up to me to be able to complement the governor, whoever she or he may be, in implementing policies. I want to make that clear. I do not expect to be the starting quarterback on this team. As the starting running back, it will be my job to help move that ball up the field. After all, when the scoreboard lights up, we're all wearing the same jersey, we're all winning. So we need to ensure that the next Lieutenant Governor is not upstaging the governor, but is an able partner. And as a former elected executive, I am best suited to step into the role of Lieutenant Governor, which is another elected executive position, and help to move our state forward as part of the next state administrative team.
Thank you, Ikaika. You know, you've given us your background. You mentioned your years within the City Council on Oahu.
Yes.
I know that recently you've made some public comments about why you resigned from your position there. I think it's important for the voters to understand a little bit about your rationale and the important decisions you had to make when you implemented that decision.
As I shared at the top of my introduction, I spent a lot of time talking about my family. Family is everything to me. When I left the Honolulu City Council in September of 2020, 3 months before my term ended, we were in the midst of COVID. I had left the Honolulu City Council in a secure place. I did return home to take care of my grandparents, where I continued to provide for their everyday needs as one of their primary caregivers. I was also in the process of gaining primary physical custody of my 3 minor-aged children. As I mentioned today, I'm a single dad, raising my 3 keiki. My oldest son has since graduated from high school, but my twins, my 12-year-old twins, are still in middle school, and it's now my responsibility to raise them here. Out of respect to my children and their mother, my now former spouse, I did not bring up that part of my family situation so that we could have the time to handle that affair and to keep that private for their sake. But it was important when I left the Honolulu City Council to be able to address those issues right then and there. There was no way I could hold off on working on gaining primary physical custody of my children until January, when I would have left the council. Working with attorneys, working with the court, that's not something that I could press a magical pause button on. I also, as I mentioned with my grandparents, was responsible to taking them to doctor appointments, doing their everyday shopping, running their errands. It was also imperative that I find employment that was going to allow me to do that and primarily focus on my family when I needed to do so. And I was able to secure employment that was very sensitive to my family needs.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ikaika. I think in electing any official, I think it's really important that values and character weigh into everybody's decision. So I think it's important that you share that information so we get to understand how you go about making your decisions that impact your personal life and those that you care for. So thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. In collaboration with the governor, typically what happens is the governor is the candidate that gets the most votes. The lieutenant governor is the candidate who gets the most votes in that election. Typically, you do not campaign as a team, if at all, until after the primary election. So how would you effectively work with the candidate for governor to best serve the people of Hawaii?
As a former elected executive myself, I understand that the lieutenant governor's role is a complementary one. And part of the reason that I'm uniquely qualified for this office is because I serve as a vice chair of the Honolulu City Council with 3 different chairs, never looking to overstep them or to overshadow them, but to complement them in driving policy for the Honolulu City Council. That's really where I'm going to be able to complement the next governor. But we also need to remember that when the governor leaves the state, she does not, or he does not, take the powers of the governorship with them. Those powers remain home here with the lieutenant governor. Then the lieutenant governor is on. And we need to make sure that the lieutenant governor is ready to step in and serve at a split-second notice. Natural disaster is on the way. Man-made disaster happens. Governor's out of state, the governor's on. I've had to make those split-second decisions. Most of the time, not easy ones. But these decisions require looking at the information that's available to you at the time you have to make the decision, and then reacting and making the most responsible decision you can, and afterwards owning that decision. No one else running for this office has been elected executive and has been tried in that manner.
Okay, thank you very much. Related question. How do you hope to personalize the role of the LG? Are there issues or programs you would hope to prioritize?
Yes, workforce housing and homeless housing are near and dear to my heart. In Waimanalo, I partnered with the current lieutenant governor to bring the Hui Mahiai Aina project to fruition. It's a tiny home village, Kauhale style, that is located on Department of Land and Natural Resources property and provides upwards of 40 shelters, hardened shelters, for formerly homeless families. The first official Kauhale opened in Kalailoa in November And there's another one that's being worked on right now in West Oahu, which shows that this process can be duplicated. And I'm not here to tell you something that I want to do or that I dream to do. I'm sharing with you folks this evening something that's near and dear to my heart, and I've actually had experience doing it. Homeless housing is one. Another is workforce housing. As a county elected official, I required one of America's largest home builders, D.R. Horton in this case, to build upwards of 300 affordable rentals for Hawaii families earning between 30% and 80% area median income. These rentals are now in existence today in West Oahu, which again is something that I've had the opportunity to build and we can expand upon. I want to utilize the Lieutenant Governor's office to provide more opportunities for our houseless families and for our working families who are having a difficult time being able to find housing. And we especially need to work on rental housing. But those are two issues near and dear to my heart that I want the Lieutenant Governor's office to work on and that I have the expertise to be able to work on.
All right, thank you very much. Next related question to housing. Cost of living in Hawaii impacts all of us. What are your thoughts about the skyrocketing cost of living here that is severely impacting many residents and forcing them to either move away or consider relocating out of state?
First and foremost, we need to provide housing for our residents. After all, if folks don't have a secure roof over their head at night and a door to lock behind of them when they come home to keep them secure and safe, very difficult for them to stay. And I believe that's one of the, if not the most important reason that people are leaving Hawaii, because they can't afford a home to own or to rent. As Lieutenant Governor, I will look at all state-owned properties to provide for additional housing needs and opportunities. One of the highest hurdles to building housing is the cost of land. Take the land acquisition costs away, with the state providing the land, even working with the county. That's a huge help there. I'd also like to bring job opportunities that really provide careers, not just jobs, like the movie industry, the high-tech industry, that leave relatively low impact footprints, but a lot of pay. Again, where these aren't just jobs, but are career opportunities for our people. So solid career opportunities, more housing, I believe, would allow for our Hawaii people the opportunity to stay in Hawaii, should they choose to stay.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Ikaika. Related question, you talked about land and the ability of utilizing state-owned land to reduce the cost of housing. How would you fund the infrastructure necessary in addition to the land? Because that's the other high component of housing costs.
Infrastructure costs can be provided assistance by the counties. In Honolulu, the county here does especially well with infrastructure. That's one of the main things that we do, that we have expertise in. Going back, if I may, to the Kauhale project, Hui Mahi Aina in Waimanalo, that was a joint city and state effort. I located the kupuna in Waimanalo, the community elder who held title to that DLNR parcel. And then through the Lieutenant Governor's efforts, we were able to encourage the Department of Land and Natural Resources to allow this type of activity to be hosted on DLNR property. And then we went ahead and worked with the community kupuna, Anti-Blanche McMillan in this case, to be able to provide the water, the infrastructure, the sewage. But the county steps forward to provide a lot of that kupua. I'd like to see that duplicated across the state, involve our counties. Oftentimes, my experience has been state government, county government doing a lot of this. I've seen that a lot. But where I have personally been involved, and one of the folks that I've worked a lot with from Hawaii Island, Council Member Tim Richards, it's been more of this. Coming together, putting our hands and our heads and our hearts together and working together collaboratively. We can do it. Hui Mahi Aina is a perfect example that we can do this.
Okay, thank you, Ikaika. Related question, you touched upon need for jobs and security, and also good paying jobs that have low impact, low footprint on our state. What is your position on astronomy, which a lot of people say is a low impact activity, and more specifically 30-meter telescope?
I'm of the opinion that there is room on Mauna Kea for science, astronomy, and culture. I do personally believe that there's room for that. I would like to also commend State Representative David Tarnis of Hawaii Island in putting together House Resolution 33 in the 2021 legislative session that ultimately put together the framework of the new working group, management group that was formed. I would like to give Representative Tarnis's idea an opportunity to work. I want to see what comes of this resolution and this scenario that Representative Tarnis came up with. You know, what Representative Tarnis has brought to the table allows Native Hawaiians not just to be consulted in matters pertaining to Mauna Kea, but we're actually decision makers now, which is wonderful. It's a great opportunity. So I believe that astronomy, there's a lot of room for astronomy on Mauna Kea, but I want to see it through this process that Representative Tarnis has brought to fruition, and I want to give this a chance to work. Let's really give this thing a chance to work before we say, no, it cannot, or yes, let's just rush forward. Let's give this an opportunity. It'd be disrespectful to Representative Tarnis, his efforts, and the people who worked with him on this to ignore what they've done.
Thank you, Ikaika, and appreciate you commenting on collaborating with folks from our island that I think a lot of us feel close and can work closely with. Thank you. Next topic is agriculture and food security. And I know that you're friends with Tim Richards. So everyone has talked about, especially during COVID, the impacts of supply chain issues and bringing all the food that we rely on reliably to our state. What is your position on diversified agriculture, specifically having to do with Hawaii Island, and how would you support that?
Yes, I'm a believer in diversified agriculture, absolutely. As a former county elected official, I am very well aware of the core services that county government provide, primarily public safety, your police, your ambulance, your fire, even down to your refuse collection and your recycling collection. With agriculture, the state needs to start treating agriculture as a core service. As Lieutenant Governor, I will champion treating agriculture as a core service. What that means is providing subsidies for our farmers on the equipment that they utilize to get their crops from farm to harvest and back on the table. With Councilmember Richards' assistance, I was able to talk to a number of Waimea farmers, both produce farmers as well as cattle ranchers, who shared with me that it would help if the state and the counties could provide some subsidies for their vehicle registration on their trucks and their equipment that they utilize. Also talking to our shipping industry and seeking subsidies. I'm absolutely open to going to our shipping companies, asking for subsidies that the state would provide, provided that we could get guarantees in the form of law that would require the farmers to turn around and take those subsidies that are given to them and pass them on to the Hawaii consumers. But this really starts by treating agriculture differently. It is a core service. It has forever been a core service. It's the source of our food. Let's start treating it like a core service. I've never ever heard this idea before, but I really had the opportunity to discuss this with Councilmember Richards and a number of Hawaii Island farmers. There's promise here, and I pledge to build upon it as Lieutenant Governor and get it done.
Thank you very much. Last question. Please share one specific thing, such as a project or service that you helped start or have dedicated a lot of time to, that you think demonstrates or clarifies why residents should vote for you as our Lieutenant Governor.
One in particular that I did talk about at length is the Hui Mahi Aina project in Waimea. Another that I worked on as a freshman council member is managing the visitor industry in Windward, Oahu. I wanted to do this on an island-wide basis on Oahu, but many of my colleagues weren't ready at the time. What this involved is taking the commercial activities that were occurring in our county parks and beach parks, some of them with permits, and taking them out of the beach park, taking them out of the parks and telling them you're going to operate only in commercially zoned areas, and returned our public properties to the taxpayers. I worked on that. It means a lot to me. I'd like to do that statewide, work to manage the visitor industry and stop overrunning our residents.
All right. Thank you, Ikaika. We've run out of time. I think James is going to close and give you time to close too also. Mahalo for all you sharing your manao. Appreciate it.
Mahalo to you folks.
Thank you, Riley. And yes, so Ikaika, please take 1 minute to make any closing remarks you'd like to share with our viewers tonight. Thank you.
one of the main concerns as I've traveled our great state, Ikaika, you live on Oahu. Many of the other candidates are either from or have lived on Oahu their entire lives. We neighbor islanders don't want to be ignored. You cannot run an Oahu-centric campaign. I get that. I've taken that to heart. As a former Hawaii State Association of Counties Executive Committee member, I pledge to ensure that the Lieutenant Governor's office will have a solid neighbor island presence if I'm elected Lieutenant Governor. You're not only going to see me come back when I run for re-election, you're going to see me regularly working with all of you and your elected community members. Thank you very much for having me. Look forward to continuing this discussion with you. If you have any more questions for me, our campaign email, ikaika@ikaikaanderson.com. Our campaign phone number is 808-259-2022. And our website, www.ikaikaanderson.com. Again, mahalo nui loa Waimea Community Association for this opportunity. And I look forward to returning to Hawaii Island soon. Aloha ahui ho.
Mahalo, Ms. Anderson. Thank you so much. It's great to have you on. All the best. Have a nice evening. Aloha.
Aloha.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here. We're going to roll right along here, and we have our next guest here in the room with us. So I'd like to welcome in Ms. Sylvia Luke. Ms. Luke, you're welcome to give your 2-minute self-introduction. So please take it away.
Aloha. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Thank you to Waimea Community Association for inviting us. It's really important for all of us to find out what the different candidates offer and what they're about. And so I really appreciate this time. I was able to visit with members of Waimea early on this year, and just listening to many of the concerns within the community, whether it was from the ranchers within Waimea, whether it was dealing with some of the issues dealing with ag lots, and also Waimea has one of the premier charter school through Waimea Conversion School. So just listening to some of the improvements and some of the excitement in Waimea really encouraged me and really inspired me to go out and serve the community even better. I have been in the legislature for 24 years. The last 10 years, I've been the chair of the finance committee. And through that, you get to see a lot of things through the budget. And through the budget, you define some of the values and you define many of the goals for the state. And through that, I was able to go and meet with many people, including visiting Waimea charter schools, visiting many Waimea Nui, which is one of the most successful homestead association in the state as well. The reason why I'm running for lieutenant governor is because I bring a different skill set. Knowing how state government works is really important. Knowing how the various departments is really important, and having that relationship with stakeholders in the community, having that relationship with the legislature, and knowing the various departments and their function, it's important. And I bring those skill set, which is different from many of the other candidates who are running for this office. I really want to thank you again, and I look forward to this conversation. Mahalo.
Thank you, Ms. Luke. So I'm going to pass it right over to our board member, Riley Smith, and he's going to really dive into the questions here with you for the next 16 minutes here. So please, Riley, take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, James. Aloha, Ms. Luke. How are you doing this evening?
Aloha, Riley.
Okay. Would you prefer I call you Ms. Luke or Sylvia? Or
No, please call me Sylvia.
Okay, will do. Sounds good. Get right into the questions. First one, role of the lieutenant governor. Although the lieutenant governor stands in for the governor during any absence, the day-to-day responsibilities of the LG are not very specific. What is your view of what the lieutenant governor's job is?
The lieutenant governor's role can be really great if you have a person with the right skill set. And that's why I'm running, because I bring those skill sets. Someone who knows how state government works, someone who already established many of the relationship with individuals in the community, many individuals who are in the legislature know how the state government works and know how state departments function. I think the role of the LG should be really the operations manager for the state. The governor has the authority and the responsibility to look at many of the issues, but a lot of times the governor has to deal with daily functions and figuring out how to best use state government to carry out many of the duties of state government. I believe the role of the lieutenant governor is really to try to help the governor and also implement many of the laws that the legislature helped pass. Because I helped pass many of the laws, I believe I know what needs to be done. A lot of times the frustration is we pass laws and they don't get done. And that's been some of my experience and some of the experience out in the community as well. So I would like to fulfill some of the responsibility of getting a lot of these projects done. And there are a lot of important issues that really need to be done.
Okay, thank you very much. Related question. In our state, the gubernatorial candidate with the most votes is paired with the lieutenant governor candidate with the most votes. They do not campaign as a team, if at all, until after the primary election. What is your perception of how you would effectively work with a successful candidate for governor in order to best serve the people of Hawaii?
You know, in my term of being finance chair, I served with 3 different personalities on the Senate side. So on the Senate side, we had David Ige, who was my counterpart, and he had a very different personality compared to the second individual who I served with, Jill Tokuda, and lastly, it was Donovan Dela Cruz. So David, Jill, and Donovan were my counterpart on the Senate side when it came to doing the budget and doing the bills for the state. I was able to work with all 3 of them with very different personalities, very different issues and vision. And because those things, I've been able to do that and also work with many of the different elected officials and stakeholders and community members to solve problems. I'm very confident that whoever is the governor, I will be able to support them and be able to be a partner to provide where the person will need a lot of help.
All right, thank you very much. Related question. How would you personalize the role of the LG, and are there issues or programs that you would hope to prioritize?
Oh, absolutely. So this year we passed several big legislation, and this isn't something that we passed this year because part of it was because we had significant amount of revenue growth, and we were able to direct many of these things into priorities. One thing that I've been working on for several years is about half of our 3- and 4-year-olds don't have access to preschool, so they can't afford to go to preschool, or it's not accessible. What we passed 2 years ago was make sure that all 3- and 4-year-olds would have access to preschool regardless of affordability and to increase access. So this year, what I did was I helped put in $200 million into a fund to provide to build more preschools, and $200 million is equivalent to about 2,000 to 4,000 more seats. And we're already working with some of the schools to figure out if there are unused classrooms that can be converted into preschool classrooms. So if you convert a classroom, that's about $1 million. And so can you imagine the huge amount of access that this would provide? This is something, because it's new, it's gonna need somebody who's gonna go in and talk to principals. You don't wanna give any more duties to the principals or teachers other than what they're already doing. So I'm assuming that part of what I would like to do is go in and talk to principals, talk to the areas, find out where some of the unused facilities are, some of the areas that we can build more preschools, and then help implement many of these things. If we can get 2,000 to 4,000 new classrooms in the next several years, this is something that we have never been able to do in such a short amount of time.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on to our next question concerning, excuse me, the cost of living. What are your thoughts about how to manage the skyrocketing cost of living here that is impacting many island residents and forcing many of them to either move away or consider moving away?
One of the biggest challenges for cost of living is affordable housing. the housing cost has skyrocketed so much that even if we're providing good paying jobs, it's not enough for people to be able to afford to live here. What we need to do is significantly increase the amount of housing inventory. At the same time, we have a large amount of short-term rental problem on every island, and even in on the Big Island, we have short-term rental that needs to be restricted and needs to be curtailed. In order to build affordable housing, these are two things. We have to build affordable rentals because there would be individuals, no matter how many housing stock we build, people may not be able to actually buy a home. So we need to make sure that we build affordable rentals. And then we should be able to also provide enough inventory to build affordable housing. I think the question is, how do you do that? Especially on the Big Island, the biggest challenge is because the land mass is so large. You can actually fit the size of entire Oahu in a little portion of the Big Island, and it's like basically 5 times or 7 times the size of Oahu and the Big Island. So can you imagine the infrastructure that's on Oahu compared to the infrastructure costs on the Big Island? So mindful of that, the biggest challenge for the Big Island is the lack of infrastructure. And in order for either electricity, that's like, a lot of people have cesspool catchment, solar. In order for us to build infrastructure, that costs a lot of money. So one of the things that we may want to look at is provide a loan or assisted loan to developers to loan them amount for the infrastructure costs or initial build-up costs. And once the housing is built, then after the sale of the housing, they can repay that loan, which should reduce the amount of housing. But that's only on the one side. We also need to look at the other side, which is to make sure that whoever buys, if this idea goes through and we provide that benefit of loan and or even a grant system to provide the initial developer funding, then on the flip side, if the developer sells the property, the developer should, we're going to require that you're going to take advantage of this program. We're going to require that the home costs be lower. And the buyer, whoever buys, you cannot sell this property within a certain period. If you do, then all the benefit or all the gains that you have made has to go back into the fund. So it will be a revolving fund. Because I think sometimes what happens is somebody might take advantage of an affordable home purchase, and then a year later they flip it and make a lot of money. And I think that's something that we want to try to suppress, and then try to figure out how we can use that model to deal with affordable housing.
All right, thank you very much. Related question having to do with Hawaii Island versus Oahu. Many years ago, the transient accommodation tax was set, and it was always our belief that the intent of the TAT was to provide resources to the outer islands so that they could address the impacts of tourism. And what has happened over time is that TAT no longer goes to Hawaii County. And being a current legislator, I was wondering what your position is on that and returning the TAT to the outer island counties.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we need to have a discussion with the county, a very close discussion, is how do we use the TAT to better manage tourism? No matter where I go, I think there is more ongoing opposition to tourism to a point where people are very frustrated in certain areas. So we really need to have a discussion with the counties about how we best allocate TAT for regenerative tourism and also our management of our lands. I think one of the discussion we should have is rather have the TAT go into the general funds. We should look at setting aside a portion of the TAT for direct tourism impact. So for instance, it would go to parks or it would go to other type of enforcement. And so this is like ongoing discussion we definitely need to have with both the counties and the community as a whole.
All right, thank you very much. The next question concerns agriculture and food security. Agriculture can be an important driver to help diversify our economy and food self-reliance. We keep being told that Hawaii Island has tremendous potential with diversified ag, but it's slow going and many farmers have an extremely difficult time. What are your thoughts on supporting diversified agriculture, specifically on Hawaii Island?
We've been talking about diversifying our economy for a long time, and the state has not really gone out of its way to support diversification of economy. And that's why we're in this situation where we continue to rely on tourism. You know, one of the things that I would like the Department of Agriculture to look at is Department of Agriculture see itself as a regulatory body as opposed to a supportive body. And so a lot of times it goes and regulates agriculture, or it regulates food, whereas Department of Agriculture should also provide a supportive role. So as an example, many of the farms in the Big Island are at a point where their 65-year lease is expiring. And these are family farms or ranch lands that have been productively used by ranchers and farmers. But the Department of Agriculture, because it's coming to a 65-year end time, they're saying, okay, it should go back to the pool and give other people an opportunity to farm or ranch. That really doesn't make sense, especially when individuals who are currently on the farm are doing great things. And, you know, and if we want future generation and the next generation to take over the family farm, then you have to provide at least some flexibility on leased lands where it is productive for agriculture and ranch lands. So these are some things that we need to work on with Department of Agriculture. The other thing is Department of Agriculture needs to release more ag lands and more pastoral lands and more ranch lands to give more opportunities for other farmers and other ranchers an opportunity to help the state in diversification and help the state with diversified agriculture.
All right, thank you very much, Sylvia. A related question, and since you've been with the legislature, I know you're pretty familiar with this. It's been said that the State Department of Agriculture, whose mission is to support sustainable agriculture, is a better department where state leases having to do with agriculture or ranching should be instead of in DLNR, whose mission is primarily conservation. Can you comment on that?
Oh, no, I absolutely agree, Riley. And we've been having continuous battles between the two departments and trying to get them aligned on what to do with these ranch lands and agriculture. And I've been a strong supporter in transferring that authority to the Department of Agriculture, which should be there to help farmers and ranchers. And that's been an ongoing battle. And I will continue to stand with farmers to help with that cause.
All right, thank you very much. Last question from me. What is your position on astronomy and specifically the 30-meter telescope?
I support astronomy and I support the 30-meter telescope, the build out of the 30-meter telescope. I think what was really compelling during my discussion with folks at Waimea was that the build out of the telescope was somehow being coupled with many of the failings of the state in dealing with Native Hawaiian issues. And I heard the frustration and anger especially from the Waimea community. So this year, when I set aside $600 million for Hawaiian homelands to deal with the wait list, and I also provided $64 million to Office of Hawaiian Affairs for our state's obligation to deal with many of the Native Hawaiian issues, I had the Waimea community in my mind because I heard from the members about how frustrated they were that they felt the state was not fulfilling some of these obligations, which got somehow tangled and coupled with the construction of the TMT. So I really appreciated all the input that Waimea gave.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. We've run out of time. I think James is going to allow you to close, but thank you so much for sharing your manao with our community. Mahalo.
No, thank you. Thank you, James, and thank you, Riley. James, you have such a friendly face. You just make me smile all the time. And Riley, thank you for being such a good host, and thank you for this opportunity. And thank you, Lonnie, for giving me this opportunity today. I just enjoy visiting Waimea all the time. It could be rainy on the other side of the mountain and you come into Waimea and it's breezy and it's cool and everybody's so friendly. And I just love the community. And this is the best part about running for LG. You get to just, in finance committee, I got to visit a lot of people, but through the LG's candidacy, I get to meet so many more people, and I just love every moment of it. I hope, I believe that I bring a skill set that no one else brings, and I'm gonna work really hard from the day I get elected for everybody in this community. And so mahalo, everyone, and I hope to gain your trust, and I would be very grateful if you would vote for me this election. Mahalo.
Thank you, Sylvia. Ms. Luke, all the best. Thank you for joining us this evening, and we'll see you again soon. Aloha.
Thank you. Aloha.
All right. How's everyone doing? I just welcome our next guest in here. So thanks everyone for staying with us here. We've gone through 3 candidates and we've got 3 more to go. So just welcoming our next one in here. All right. Okay. Miss Sherry Menor-McNamara is up next. So Sherry, please, I'll give you 2 minutes for a self-introduction. Please go right ahead.
Okay, aloha and good evening. Thank you so much for the honor to participate in the this town hall or forum. I'm excited because for those who don't know, I am from the Big Hawaii Island. I grew up in Hilo, and I remember in high school, we would drive through Waimea to go to Kona to play the basketball games or go to HPA to participate in some school activities. But I just remember fondly that Waimea is such a special place. And so I just feel connected already to you this evening. I was raised in Hilo, went to Waikea High School, graduated from there. And I'm currently the president of the Chamber of Commerce Hawaii, and we represent more than 2,000 small businesses statewide. People ask me, why do you want to leave the chamber and run for lieutenant governor, a statewide office? I just feel that we are at a defining moment in Hawaii. And if we ask ourselves, has the cost of living, cost of doing business, and many other challenges that we face right now, have they improved? Because these are challenges that have been around for a long time. And if we ask ourselves what the answer is, at least I know by visiting all the islands through the state, the answer is no, things have not improved. And part of it is because we have the same leaders, same politicians serving in different office. And I just believe that this is a time to seize the opportunity and have a fresh start for Hawaii and bring new ideas, new leadership, new perspectives to come up with more collaborative solutions. So I am excited about this position. And as someone who grew up on the neighbor island, I certainly appreciate the neighbor island concerns and their voices. And I want to be that lieutenant governor who will serve as that voice on behalf of the neighbor islands so that they are at the table. And so I'm excited about this and to be here and to answer the questions that you have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sherry. So I'm going to pass it over to our next board member, Lonnie Olson-Chang, and she's going to dive right into the questions with you here. So please take it away, Lonnie. I'll make sure you're unmuted there, and then you should be all set. Awesome. There we go. No, all good.
Thank you. Aloha, Sherry, and welcome home.
Thank you.
Having a hyphenated last name, I know it can be a mouthful. So may I call you Sherry?
You sure can.
Thank you. So the first question talks about the role of a lieutenant governor. And although the lieutenant governor stands in for the governor during any absences, the day-to-day responsibilities of the LG are not very specific. What is your view of what the lieutenant governor's job is?
Well, first, Lieutenant Governor should work shoulder to shoulder with the governor and be a partner. Too many times we have seen the governor and lieutenant governor go on different tracks and pushing their own agenda. And so for me, the role of the lieutenant governor is to be that partner. And if elected, I commit to work shoulder to shoulder with the governor, whether it's he or she, in coming up with a comprehensive plan that addresses the cost of living. Two, as lieutenant governor, through my skill sets as representing businesses and understanding business and economy, I would like to lead an economic recovery effort to ensure that if we grow through this pandemic again, that our economy will not be impacted, or at least minimized the impact, and come up with a more sustainable economy. Three, I want to make sure that, again, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, that I want to serve as that bridge between the neighbor islands and the governor to make sure that their voices are heard at the table. And four, as lieutenant governor, in my experience working, although I'm a first-time candidate, I've had 16 years working with the legislature, working with the administration. So I understand the process and how it works. So what I want to do is serve as that link between the legislature, the communities, as well as the governor, so that it's a much more collaborative approach to the way we govern.
Thank you very much, Sherry. You've pretty much answered the next couple of questions on collaborating with the new governor and also what your priorities are. So let's talk a little bit about the cost of living. What are your thoughts about the skyrocketing cost of living here that is severely impacting many island residents and forcing them to consider moving away?
And that's the last thing we want, right? Is to have our families move away. It's happening right now, and we'd have to stop that. And we all know that part of the cost of living is housing. Through my campaign journey, I visited each island, and it's consistently the top issue. The cost of housing has skyrocketed. So we need to address that. And some of the thoughts that I have are, one, look at the rules and regulations. And then by doing that, looking at and talking with our developers, talking with our construction companies, talking with community organization, and determining what is stalling any type of efficient, what is stalling them from being able to build in a timely manner. Because every time the time to build expands, that adds to the cost of housing. So we need to look at that. But again, as Lieutenant Governor, I want to bring those stakeholders together to come up with that plan to address housing. Two, from a long-term standpoint, we need to invest in building trades, because in order to build the houses, we need to ensure we have enough workers to do that. So ensure that we can build a more skilled workforce. And then three, making sure that knowing that we have all these federal dollars coming to Hawaii, to see what can we do and use those dollars to help build more homes here. Now, these are some thoughts, but as Lieutenant Governor, I want to work and partner with the governor to come up with this comprehensive plan that addresses housing, that addresses the cost of goods and services, that addresses childcare, and all these factors that are driving the cost of living. But we cannot do it as a band-aid approach, going into each session, coming up with bills that just touches on here and there. We need to look at it in a very comprehensive way for the short term as well as the long term. And that's the Lieutenant Governor I want to be, is to work with the governor to come up with that plan.
Thank you. Since 2021, the state legislature has completely withheld all transient accommodations tax income from the county, in effect burying more than $600 million contributed annually by the visitor industry in the general fund. These funds were originally intended to address and mitigate the impacts of tourism on counties. What do you think about restoring TAT allocations to the neighbor island counties?
I believe that's important. A UHERO study showed that even though the state collected TATs and it continued to grow during this certain time period, the county still received the same amount year over year. And when the legislature took away the TAT from the counties, it was about fixing the financial situation of the state rather than addressing the economic situation of the taking away TAT and what the effective of it. It was more about fixing another problem, and we cannot approach it that way. We all know that tourism is our #1 industry. Can it be managed better? Yes, but we need to continue to support tourism, and we know how reliant the counties are on tourism. And so anytime we impact that, then it just hurts the people of each county, their families, and has a trickle-down impact. So yes, I believe that the TAT should be restored and provided to and allocated to the counties.
Thank you. Regarding astronomy, what is your position on astronomy and specifically the 30-meter telescope, and what do you think is the path forward?
I had the opportunity to visit the telescope years ago, and it's hard to describe unless you're there and you look through the lens of the telescope and look out into the universe and see what's out there and how we have made the impossibilities possible. And that's what astronomy is. It is about finding out what that North Star is. We talk about North Star a lot of times and how to reach it. And astronomy helps with that. And, you know, Yuhiro mentioned it brings in more than $200 million to the state. And I believe half of that to Hawaii County. And so it's a huge economic driver. And we've seen firsthand how the pandemic impacted tourism industry. And now we're having discussions how to invest in more sustainable industries. Astronomy is one of them. So we should be supporting astronomy and so that it can be a more sustainable industry to support. And especially the path forward. But beyond just the economic aspect of it, it's about the education. It's about scientific discovery. It's about how Hawaii can be put on a global map because we have the best place to have telescopes. We talk about our kids going away because they can't find quality jobs here, but yet we're teaching STEM here. But if there's not enough jobs here that require STEM skills, we're going to see our keiki go away. But astronomy is one of those industries that is here, and we can train our keiki to explore the astronomy industry and be able to work with astronomy from early on and be invested in it so they want to stay here. So I support astronomy, and TMT is part of astronomy, so I do support TMT. Now that the legislature passed that committee of the new governance structure, we want to make sure we have the right people on there that can provide that balanced approach and discuss how can we support astronomy in a positive way that is inclusive of the community's input.
Thank you. I think you touched a little bit about housing and affordable housing earlier, but if you can elaborate a little bit more on how we're going to how you intend to help solve the housing crisis and also the homelessness.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, the housing crisis, again, I want to support what the governor's proposal is to address housing, because again, as I mentioned earlier, it would not do the people any good if the LOG has its own policy agenda and the governor has their own agenda and trying to push that forward, then nothing gets done. So I want to serve as a partner with the governor to come up with an effective housing plan. And that involves going out into the community and talking with the stakeholders and bring them to the table to identify what are the barriers and tackle those first. And then from a long-term standpoint as well, how do we build the type of homes that our future keiki wants? So that's another factor that hasn't really been discussed because what we build now, we want to make sure it's the type of homes that the future our keiki are going to be living in. So I think we need to bring them into the conversation as well. But from a immediate term, yes, identifying what those barriers are. And the only way we can do that is by talking with the various stakeholders to identify that. As in regards to homelessness, we need to invest more in mental health services and seek more preventative measures. And a lot of it is working with families from early on, because if we don't have a functional environment from the very beginning, the situation will continue to exacerbate. So we need to look at more preventative measures as well as invest in more mental health services and do public-private partnerships. There's been a couple of successful projects. One of them was Dwayne Carisa's project out at the airport. Working families being able to live in a community. Their homes may not be huge, but it's a close-knit community that teaches them how to become more sustainable. They have their own community gardens, and there's certain policies that are in place in that community. And there's another homeless shelter community where it teaches them to become more of a more being able to support themselves. And we need to invest more in transitional services. How do we help the homeless that are working, but helping them transition into affordable homes? And part of it are affordable rents as well. So there's different approaches to homelessness, but those are some of the ideas that I have and that I've seen works in a public-private partnership.
Thank you. And you've had the opportunity to visit Waimea Nui, you mentioned, which I think is awesome. So let's talk a little bit about that, about the money that was allocated to get the people into houses and onto the land. What would you do if elected to help the governor and department expedite use of these funds in appropriate ways?
Right. A lot of times monies are appropriated, but we don't think of the how. So the policymakers don't think of the how, and that's so important in the equation before allocating, determining the how. And part of the determining the how to implement it is to talk with those involved, bringing DHH together with the homesteaders and those who will get them, and then bringing them together to determine how can we get this implemented efficiently and effectively. And that's, as Lieutenant Governor, I want to serve as that kind of bridge builder, that kind of liaison to bring the community and and government together to ensure. There's all too many times only seen where government only consults with themselves and not with those who are the very people that are impacted. And so it's going to be very important early on, before we come up with whether this proposal or other types of proposals, to include the community in the process and early on.
Thank you. Talking a little bit about state parks. They're generating income by charging admission to the state parks throughout the state, and particularly referring to Hapuna Beach. It's good that we're getting revenue to these state parks. However, the public restrooms are in not very good condition. They're in kind of poor condition. And there's difficulty in getting enough lifeguards to be at these beaches. As Lieutenant Governor, would you support restricting funds generated by our Hawaii Island state parks to benefit Hawaii Island residents?
Yes, because I believe that if that state park is on Hawaii Island, it should benefit the people of that island. And that's where the counties and the state need to work together more to ensure that there is a more collaborative plan when they consider these proposals.
Thank you. Invasive species is something that we've touched on a little bit, but invasive species have severely impacted and even eliminated native ecosystems across Hawaii. This has cost taxpayers and individuals millions of dollars, and in some cases placed the lives of humans, farm animals, and native flora and fauna at risk. Let's get to the bottom of this. What solutions do you support and why?
Well, we definitely need to invest more in inspectors, invest more in the services. And that's something that we've seen in government, that they've cut services over time, or maybe sometimes restore, but cut. And I believe we need to, again, look at it from a preventative standpoint. How can we ensure that the situation doesn't get worse? So what's driving it to get worse? And we need to look at it in a much more comprehensive way. Again, too many times you've seen such just Band-Aid solutions. And this is something as Lieutenant Governor, I want to work with the governor and the different stakeholders and the departments to determine what is that plan that is much more sustainable and much more effective.
Thank you so much, Sherry. One last question for you. What one thing about Hawaii government today inspires or motivates you to want to become our Lieutenant Governor in such difficult times?
I believe in Hawaii. I believe in our people. And I know we can do better and we must do better. Generations before us have sacrificed so much, and they have done so much to build Hawaii. I feel like we're at a stall or reversing course. And we owe it to them, but we also owe it to the future generations. And everybody plays a role in making Hawaii a better place. And for me, was running for lieutenant governor, because with my statewide experience as a leader, and then working with different stakeholders, and I feel that I can help in that way. Through this campaign journey as a first-time candidate, what's been so inspiring is meeting with people, hearing their stories, hearing their ideas, and all of them want to do better. And I know we can. And so that's what inspired me to run for office, is knowing that I can do my part because everybody else is doing their part in a different way, because we all believe in Hawaii.
Thank you so much, Sherry, for joining us this evening.
Thank you. That was quick. I really appreciate
Aloha.
the time. Great questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Lonnie. And Sherry, please take one more minute to make any closing remarks you'd like to share with our viewers. Please go right ahead.
Oh, thank you. Well, as the only candidate with Neighbor Island roots, one, I will make sure that the Neighbor Island voice is always at the table. And of course, Big Island and Hawaii Island always holds a special place in my heart because I was raised here. Two, I just truly believe that this is an opportunity to seize, to have that fresh start for Hawaii, and a new direction, new leadership, new ideas. Because I know we can, as I mentioned earlier, we can do this. But what we need to do more is to work together. And as Lieutenant Governor, I want to serve as that bridge to the communities, go out into the communities, listen to the people, find out what the concerns are, and find out what the solutions are, frankly, because government does not have all the answers. So I want to be that link between the communities and working very closely with the governor and the legislature so that together we can build a better Hawaii. So mahalo for your time, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Wish you all the best. Have a nice evening. Appreciate you joining us. Aloha.
Good night.
All right. We're just going to keep moving along here. I'm grateful for our guests joining, and our next guest is tuning in right now. All right. Mr. Keith Amemiya has joined us. So I'd like to give you 2 minutes, sir, to please give a self-introduction, and you can take it away right now.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. Good evening, everyone. I'm Keith Amemiya, candidate for Lieutenant Governor, and I'm running for Lieutenant Governor because we need change. I'm the only candidate in the race that's not a career politician or a lobbyist, and I'm the only candidate in the race with executive leadership experience. I've led large statewide organizations with large number of employees and large budgets where I was directly responsible for the company's or the organization's bottom line and the welfare of the employees. I'm also the only candidate in the race that's dedicated his entire career to community service, where I've worked directly in each and every community across this state. As the head of the Hawaii High School Athletic Association, I had the opportunity to go many times to each and every high school in the state, all 98 public and private high schools. I went into their communities. I worked in those communities. I got to meet the community leaders and many working families across the state, which gives me a better perspective and understanding about the issues that face them today and that they're concerned about. And finally, I'm the only candidate in the race with a plan to clean up corruption at our Capitol. We'll do that by imposing term limits, eliminating or banning fundraising during the legislative session, eliminating conflicts of interest, and requiring legislators to comply with existing sunshine laws. Those measures will go a long way towards addressing the needs and concerns of our communities today, and that includes homelessness, the utter lack of affordable housing across our state, and climate change. So thanks again for the opportunity, and I look forward to the questions.
Mahalo, Keith. Thank you so much. So I'm going to jump right over to and pass it over to Lonnie, and she'll dive into the questions with you. Please, Lonnie, take it away.
Aloha, Mr. Amemiya. Thanks
Aloha.
for joining us this evening. Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
first thing we're going to talk about is the role of the Lieutenant Governor. Although the Lieutenant Governor stands in for the governor during any absences, the day-to-day responsibilities of the lieutenant governor are not very specific. What is your view of what the lieutenant governor's job is?
Well, as you pointed out, the lieutenant governor is the #2 person in the state. And if the governor is unable to fulfill his or her duties, the lieutenant governor steps in and takes his or her place. And obviously, that's an important role and function. But other than that, there's also some important roles and functions of the lieutenant governor. It's largely what you make of it. I have a good relationship with the 3 current Democratic gubernatorial candidates. I look forward to the opportunity to work with whoever wins and work side by side with whoever that may be to tackle the existing problems that our state faces, of which there are many. Josh Green, the current lieutenant governor, has shown us that the position is largely what you make of it, and you can have a very important and impactful role as lieutenant governor if you have the will and the vision and the courage to get things done. And that's what I intend to do as lieutenant governor. There's too many problems in our state, too many issues for one person to tackle, and I look forward to the opportunity to work side by side with whoever our next governor may be.
Thank you. Talking about priorities, how would you personalize the role of lieutenant governor? Are there specific issues or programs you would hope to prioritize?
Yes, some of the issues I'd like to address are affordable housing, homelessness, and climate change. And let's start with affordable housing. Depending on what study you read, the amount of affordable housing that we need to meet demand in the state is as high as 60 to 65,000. That didn't happen overnight. That happened over the course of 20, 30, 40 years. I remember when I was a young child, which was quite a long time ago, they were already talking about the lack of affordable housing. That's due to the sheer inaction of our current legislature, our current political leaders. I want to tackle that with all I can, with every bone in my body, with all the energy that I have. Affordable housing or the lack thereof is a big reason that Hawaii has largely become unaffordable for the vast majority of our population. I mean, what working family can afford a $1.2 million median price home? You see those numbers, it's staggering. And it shows in the number of people that are leaving our state. Far more people are leaving our state than coming into our state. Many of them are working families who have just given up, and that's a shame. I have a college-age son, along with my wife, of course, and I want him to have a fighting chance to be able to come back home after college, to be able to live, work, raise a family, and play like all of us have been fortunate to do. But right now, that's not possible for the vast majority of our younger generation. I'll also add that not only are younger people moving out of state in droves, our kupuna are moving out of state. They've told me while I've gone across the state campaigning for lieutenant governor that they are on fixed incomes. They can't afford the increase in rent. They can't afford the increase in food prices and gas prices and everything else. Their children are moving out of state, their grandchildren are moving out of state, so they feel forced to move out of state. And that's totally unacceptable. And that's a failure of leadership in our state. And that's one of the main reasons I'm running for lieutenant governor.
Thank you. And you've touched about that on the cost of living. And just to elaborate a little bit on that, let's talk about the transient accommodations tax income. These funds were originally intended to address and mitigate the impacts of tourism on the counties. What do you think about restoring TAT allocations to the neighbor island counties?
I'm in support of that. As you pointed out, that was the intent. The TAT was not intended to help supplement the state's revenues and support their bottom line. It was meant for the counties. It was meant to support and mitigate the costs of having so many tourists across our state, including our neighbor islands. The TAT was intended to fix our roads, our highways, make sure that our sewer and water lines and our utility lines are functioning properly. And so to even perhaps address, some of the other things like on Hawaii Island, there's a waste issue. If I'm not mistaken, one of your Waste facilities are at capacity or near capacity. And so if the TAT money was restored to the counties like it's was supposed to be, the counties would have much less financial problems, of course. And in turn, the quality of life of neighbor island residents would be much, much better.
Thank you. Talking a little bit about agriculture and food security. Agriculture can be important to help diversify our economy and improve food self-reliance in Hawaii. We keep being told Hawaii Island has tremendous potential with diversified ag, but it's slow going and many farmers here are extremely frustrated that ag gets a lot of talk, but not serious support. What are your thoughts on this issue?
Well, I share their frustration. This is like affordable housing and homelessness as well, along with many other issues. I've heard about these concerns and issues for decades, and our lack of leadership across the state, especially with our elected officials, is a big reason that we have food security issues. Obviously, it's important and imperative that we address the food security issues. And I'm in full support of farmers across the state and want to do whatever I can as Lieutenant Governor to make sure that they're supported in the best way possible. There are so many reasons why we need to support our local farmers. It's to address the food security issues. We saw this at the start of the pandemic, where many of our grocery store shelves were empty. It was quite alarming. It was quite scary. We cannot let that happen again. I'm preaching to the choir, to a large segment of your audience. I mean, the other reasons we want to grow more products or crops in our state is to, of course, be less reliant on out-of-state food sources, but the food is better, it's healthier, and it costs less in the long run by growing more of our food here, and it helps our local economy and our local farmers. So I'm all for increased support of our local farmers, including those on Hawaii Island.
Thank you. Elaborating a little more on that, in 2002, the legislature put in place a law to transfer specific farm and ranch leases on state land from DLNR to the State Department of Agriculture because DOA's mission is to support sustainable agriculture. DLNR's mission is conservation. Little has happened to implement the 2002 law over the past 20 years. Should farm and ranching leases on state land be turned over to DOA from DLNR?
Well, I don't know, and I'm not familiar enough with the issue, but whatever is the best way, and I would listen and learn and talk to people in the various industries and get their opinion. But whatever it takes to support our farming industry and our ranching industry, I'm in support of. Again, our government has not served us well, including our ranchers and our farmers. And as Lieutenant Governor, I want to make sure that government helps the community, helps our farmers, helps our ranchers, instead of being an impediment and just another obstacle to get things done here.
Thank you. Relating to astronomy, what is your position on astronomy and specifically the 30-meter telescope? And in your opinion, what is the best path forward?
Well, whenever we in Hawaii have an opportunity to be the centerpiece of discovery, of learning more about the world around us, I think we should seriously look at it. By the same token, the issues and concerns of Native Hawaiians have not been addressed for decades, if not centuries. And I'm really confident and optimistic that we can find a balance. TMT seems like it was the tipping point for many people who are concerned about Native Hawaiian rights and the fact that they haven't been addressed for a long, long time. It's the issues facing Native Hawaiians are beyond just whether a telescope or another telescope should be built on Mauna Kea. And I'm confident that if we work together, communicate with both sides, give confidence to Native Hawaiians that their issues and concerns will be finally addressed sincerely and genuinely once and for all, we can accommodate both sides, and that hopefully a telescope can be built and Native Hawaiian concerns and grievances can be addressed.
Thank you. Speaking of Native Hawaiians, let's move to DHHL issues. In 2022, the legislature funded $600 million for DHHL to expedite getting the Hawaiians into housing and onto the land. Many agree that adequate funding for DHHL is long overdue, but managing this avalanche of funding will be a huge challenge. What would you do if elected to help the governor and department expedite use of these funds in appropriate ways?
Well, as I mentioned in a prior answer, let's cut through the red tape. Let's cut through the bureaucracy. It seems like state-funded projects take forever, or government projects in general take far too long to plan and actually build. Let's review the processes to approve housing developments. And let's also look at the private sector and talk to them about their suggestions on how to build quicker and faster. And let me add that it's fantastic that this money has been appropriated finally to address the shortage of affordable housing for Native Hawaiians in particular. But why did it take so long for this to happen? This should have been addressed over a period of several decades. And, we're not going to be able to count on having this amount of money appropriated every time. I mean, we were lucky to have a lot of money provided by the federal government in terms of pandemic relief this past year. We can't assume that's going to happen again. And I go back to the failure of leadership and why we waited so long to address this issue when it should have been a long, long time ago.
Thank you. A little bit about energy. How will you help Hawaii become energy self-reliant and reduce our dependence on fossil fuel? Do you support geothermal as a renewable form of baseload energy generation?
Here in Hawaii, we have every source of renewable energy out there. We have solar, hydro, we have geothermal, we have biomass, and wind. And to me, there is no excuse that we can't accelerate the process to be 100% renewable before 2045. There is no excuse to having to continue to import millions and millions of gallons of fuel, fossil fuels, every year into Hawaii. I'm supportive of all forms of renewable energy, or at least looking into it, but obviously mitigating any adverse impacts on our citizens and on our land. And so I would defer to the experts in terms of geothermal energy and whether it's safe, reliable, cost efficient, and of course, talk to the residents in those areas that are impacted. But we owe it to ourselves to look at all possible sources of renewable energy to get off our reliance on fossil fuels and speed towards 100% renewable energy.
Thank you. Talking a little bit about our emergencies, we're susceptible to so many emergencies like hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanic activity, and chain disruption for our dependence on imported food. How do you think emergency response can be improved?
Well, like I said, over time, government has been concerned more about process than outcomes. I mean, we have administrative handbooks. We have Hawaii revised statutes that are volumes upon volumes long. We need to review all of these processes and remind ourselves what government is for. Government is to make life easier for companies and our citizens. And we've strayed away from that. And so, I'm in favor of changing the mindset of government, that you work for the people, for the taxpayers, and somewhere along the line that's gone astray.
Thank you. We're getting down to the last question, Mr. Amemiya. Can you tell us one thing about Hawaii government today that inspires or motivates you to want to become our lieutenant governor in such difficult times?
Well, I'll go back to my tenure as the executive director of the Hawaii High School Athletic Association, where I oversaw high school sports all across the state. I had the opportunity to work with many high school administrators, whether they were principals, athletic directors, and coaches. And people like those that I work with give me hope. They are not in it for the money, that's for sure, but they're in it for our youth. They're in it for improving the quality of life of our state, of ensuring that our younger generation has an opportunity, a fighting chance to succeed and become productive citizens. And so I look forward to the opportunity to work with public servants like that as your Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Amemiya. Really appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Keith. Appreciate you being here with us. I'm going to give you one more minute to make any closing remarks you'd like to share with our viewers. So please go right ahead.
Sure. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor because we need change. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor because I care about our communities. I'm concerned about the direction our state is headed, and I want to create a better future for all of us, especially our younger generations. I'm the only candidate in the race with a plan to address corruption in our legislature by eliminating fundraisers during the session, by eliminating conflicts of interest, and so forth, so that we can address the critical issues facing our state today, whether it's homelessness, affordable housing, and climate change. I thank you again for this opportunity, and I humbly ask for your support and your vote. Aloha and mahalo.
Thank you so much, Mr. Amemiya. Great to have you on here with us. Have a nice evening. All the best. Aloha.
Aloha.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We're just welcoming our next guest in here. And we're looking pretty good. How's everyone doing out there?
Hanging in.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Kim, are you there with us?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kim, for joining us. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes for a self-introduction. So please take it away.
Okay, thank you. My name is Tae Kim. I've been a resident of Hawaii for about 50 years, been a lawyer for about 30. My primary area of practice is criminal defense, although I've done other works. Some 20 years ago, I've done a lot of child protective service work, CPS work, represented over 100 cases, representing parents and children alike as a guardian ad litem. I still work as guardian ad litem for family court, assisting mental health in state's petition for involuntary hospitalization. I am running for Lieutenant Governor because I do believe there needs to be a lot of cooperation within the departments, which is lacking. I don't believe departments are working together enough. It's always been not my committee, not my responsibility, not my section, not my association, if you will. And there's just been too much division within the Democrats. I do believe in the last 63 years of Hawaii's statehood, it's been primarily run by Democrats. And I have nothing against Democrats. It's just that when you're 95% Democrats, there really isn't a reason for division. There really isn't a reason for delay. And things have been delayed, much to residents' expense. One prime example is rail. It's taken how many years, and we're still going, and we still haven't seen it run. And also the other example comparable to rail is H3. It took how many decades for H3 to be, I mean, I guess the younger generation is not aware, but older people do. I'm 56 years old, and I believe I can contribute to the state of Hawaii. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Appreciate that. And I'm going to pass it over to our board member, Lonnie, and she's going to dive into some questions with you. So Lonnie, please take it away.
Aloha, Mr. Kim. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
We're going to start with the role of Lieutenant Governor. Although the Lieutenant Governor stands in for the governor during many absences, or any absences, sorry, the day-to-day responsibilities of the Lieutenant Governor are not very specific. What is your view of what the Lieutenant Governor's job is?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Basically, this is my belief of Lieutenant Governor. Lieutenant Governor is not handpicked, is not selected, or is not supported by governor. Lieutenant Governor answers to people, just as the governor does. Lieutenant Governor is elected by the people, just as governor does. The Lieutenant Governor, although gets assigned projects from the governor, Lieutenant Governor's job is check and balance. As a Lieutenant Governor, I will not blindly support the governor. I will not blindly support the governor in hope to get his endorsement or his support for something later. And I would make this promise, and I think that I'm the only candidate would say, I'm not going to be an incumbent. That which means even if I'm elected, I will not serve second term. I will not seek a re-election, and I will not seek governorship. I don't have to be the governor to support and serve the people of Hawaii.
Thank you. So we know that in our election, the governor is the one that gets the most votes, as the same with the lieutenant governor. You don't come, I mean, they don't come campaign as a team, if at all, till after the primary election in August. How will you effectively work with the successful candidate for governor in order to best serve the people of Hawaii?
Well, after the primary election, I will, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected or on the primary side, I will definitely meet with the governor on my party and discuss what his agendas are and express to him what my belief and understanding is on how to better state of Hawaii. In that sense, I will support the general election on things that I agree with him, but I will not so much focus on the issues for the general election, but focus on the issue of serving the people of Hawaii.
Thank you. Elaborating on that a little, how would you personalize the role of lieutenant governor? Are there specific issues or programs that you would hope to prioritize?
I'm all about public safety and public health. That's my entire goal. I'm as a lieutenant governor, I would not be a reporter of COVID. And not to pun any other individual, but my role as a lieutenant governor is to be the voice of the people, but giving the voice back to the people. I will visit every community and hear what the community's concerns are as a lieutenant governor, and I will share that with, not just with the governor, the lawmakers in general, to find out where the people stand on different issues. Again, public health and public safety is my primary concern.
Thank you. A little bit about the cost of living. What are your thoughts about the skyrocketing cost of living here that is severely impacting many island residents and forcing some to consider moving away?
You know, that's always been an issue with us, and it's going to get, I'm afraid it's going to get worse with inflation going up. And I don't think with the rise in interest rate or raising the interest rate would curb the inflation by any means. I think inflation is gone up so high, we have to face deflation. We have to face some sort of a slowdown. And my primary concern is this. We have so many social economic needs in the state of Hawaii. We have so many social programs that needs to be funded. There has to be other means of funding them. And as a tourism-driven economy, I don't think that's enough to provide or sustain the residents of Hawaii. And we cannot overburden the residents by raising taxes, any type of taxes. And we cannot wait around for federal government to give us handouts. So I do believe we need to move as a state on our own to seek foreign investment in solar energy, as well as looking into gaming. We need funds, we need means to support the residents, support the education, and support the health and public safety.
Talking about astronomy, what is your position on astronomy and specifically the 30-meter telescope? In your opinion, what is the best path forward?
You know, as far as Mauna Kea and what's been happening, the protests and whatnot, I don't believe the general public are fully aware of what had occurred, what other alternatives there were. I think that people need to be better informed about what alternative there are in terms of management, whether Mauna should be used for astronomy, whether there's another alternative for that. So people must get involved and be informed of what had transpired. And I think most of us are really in the dark about why there had been protests to begin with. Why was there a need for a protest to begin with?
Okay, thank you. About affordable housing, can you share your thoughts about how to help solve the affordable housing crisis that the state finds itself in right now?
You know, as far as housing is concerned, that's another big socioeconomic issues we need to tackle. And just as public health and public safety issues are, affordable housing, now first and foremost, we need to redefine what is affordable. What do you mean by affordable? Is it affordable to middle income, low income, or to poverty level? We need to redefine that. And again, we need the means to provide for affordable housing. And we got to find out, how can we, not just talking about it, how can we actually implement the affordable housing initiative? And where the money is going to come from, who's going to fund it? Is there a private public partnership to do it? So all of these needs means to address these affordable issues.
Okay, moving on to agriculture and food security. Agriculture can be important to help diversify our economy and improve food self-reliance in Hawaii. We keep being told Hawaii Island has tremendous potential with diversified ag, but it's slow going, and many farmers here are extremely frustrated that ag gets a lot of talk, but not serious support. What are your thoughts on this issue?
You know, agricultural issues, self-sustaining issues, growing our own food, all of that is a very, very novel ideal, and I support it wholeheartedly. You know, there's some of the best vegetables and fruits and, you know, agricultural items are grown here. I mean, they're exported everywhere in the world. People love it, people seek it. I mean, one of the obvious ones are like Kona coffee, you know, papaya industry. We need to support them. But again, it's easy to say we support it, but the initiative to put it in place, we need means to do it. We need funds to do it. Where is it going to come from? We need private-public partnership. We need investment. We need to make sure it's carried through.
Talking about energy, how will you help Hawaii become energy self-reliant and reduce our dependence on fossil fuel? Do you support geothermal as a renewable form of baseload energy generation?
Yes, anything that's renewable, anything that would get us out of fossil fuel, what we import millions of gallons of fossil fuel every year. Almost everything, 99% of everything is run by fossil fuel imported from everywhere. Places like Russia, places all over the world. We cannot do that. We need to be energy independent. We live in the state of Hawaii where we have sunshine, year round. Why we're not exploring more solar energy and solar power products, batteries, solar cells? We have enough solar panel companies locally that the state can contract with at cost and giving them the service contract and to run things. I mean, myself and my wife, we own electric cars, and it's not expensive electric cars. We don't drive Teslas or Porsche electric cars. I drive a Nissan Leaf. My wife drives a BMW i3 used car. It doesn't give us very many miles, but enough to get around because we live in an island. And why are we powering electric cars with fossil fuels? We need solar cell stations where we would charge our cars, and we need to support that. We need to get away as the most isolated part of the world that we live in. Why are we so dependent on fossil fuels that we get from other parts of the world, 10, 15, 20,000 miles away yearly? And we're storing fossil fuels underground in our land all over the state in form of gas stations. It's ridiculous. Solar energy has been around 60, 70 years, and we're behind. Hawaii is behind. As a place with sunshine year round, we need to invest more in geothermal, solar energy, wind power. We need to do much, much more.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about our climate change. So climate change puts Hawaii at risk in many ways, from disastrous sea level rise to drought, wildfires, coral bleaching, more intense storms. What do you think about the planning in progress and programs being implemented by our state and counties, and what ideas would you bring to the table?
That question about climate change goes hand in hand with renewable energy. Hawaii must be a leader. Hawaii can be a leader. I mean, I know we're such a small place and we're most isolated and we're in the middle of East and West, but we can be an example to the world that, renewable energy is a way to go. Otherwise, climate change will get worse. Otherwise, the Earth will not just take it. It will run out of time. And it may not be in my generation or my next generation, but it will catch up to us. And as Hawaii, with the shoreline erosion because of climate change, because of water level rising, we need to do much more, and we need to invest in renewable energy. We need to be a global leader on solar energy. We can have manufacturing companies here. We can reach out to different solar electric companies to invest in Hawaii, so that I'm hoping, I mean, people don't realize how useful, how powerful it is to use solar instead of fossil.
Thank you. About emergency responses, we're susceptible to a wide array of emergencies, from hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanic activity, and disruption to our supply chain as well. How do you think emergency response can be improved?
You know, we need to have coordination within the department. I mean, that's one thing that I feel has been lacking or delayed rather between different emergency departments, whether it's police, fire, or ambulance, or other departments. We need to have more coordination and in not pushing the bucket or passing the bucket on somebody else or some other department. We need to work together as a team, and there really wasn't any reason not to. So we need to coordinate that along with the federal response team.
As Lieutenant Governor, what role do you see yourself playing in helping the state address homelessness?
You know, to me, I know there's been a recent count with homelessness number being kind of the same. They're less in the shelter, more on the street, and so forth. But in totality, the homelessness number is the same. I don't believe that's correct. I believe even from the neighborhood where I see Kapahulu, Date Street, Kapiolani, King Street, homelessness are really it's come to some sort of a subculture. They have the subculture of their own where homelessness is rampant. People would rather be at this point homeless than to be in the shelter because they don't want to be in a restricted place. But homelessness must end. It's not humane. Everyone has a right to shelter, have a roof over their head, but it must come with a condition. We cannot say everyone gets a placement, everyone gets a cot, everyone gets a bed without a condition. We need to implement, unless and until we have programs in place, shelters, additional shelters to address mental health, to address substance abuse. Unless we have a lot of these places in place, and until then, we need to enforce it. We cannot just sweep from one area to another, from Young Street to King Street to Kapahulu or Kapiolani. We cannot just keep moving them around. We must enforce and end homelessness to make the homelessness accountable, if you will. This is not a way to punish the poor. This is not a way to punish people in poverty. But homelessness is so rampant that it's not a town issue anymore. It's gone out as far as Kapolei, North Shore. Wherever there's a residential area with shopping centers, you're going to see homeless. And it's come to a point where, as I see it, it has a culture of their own where they would rather be homeless and live in that lifestyle. But we can't have that. We can't have the homeless parked in front of businesses and schools and residential areas where they would pose not just the public safety, but a threat.
Thank you. So one last question. Please share one specific thing, such as a project or a service that you helped start or have dedicated a lot of time to, that you think demonstrates or clarifies why residents should vote for you to be our Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you. Let me start by saying this. When I first ran for prosecutor 2 years ago, and when I decided to run for Lieutenant Governor this time around, the impression I got from people and people in politics as well as general public is, you're not running as a Democrat, you won't have a chance. You're not running as a so-and-so, you're not having XYZ's support and some sort of a contact. This is my belief. Public service should be served by public in general. Public service should be served by public. And most important part is after service, you leave. You don't pass it to someone else. You don't wait for someone else to replace you. You serve and you leave. My biggest agenda, again, is public safety and public health. I will do everything I can within the 4 years to reach out to the people and listen to people's voice as to what their concerns are. That's my promise. 4 years, how can you accomplish anything in 4 years? I don't have to do it all. I don't want to do it all. You don't want me to do it all. I want to pass it to someone who would take over, would take the next step, maybe a different direction, if you will. But public service should be public service, not self-service. Thank you.
Mr. Kim, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Mahalo.
Aloha.
Thank you, Lonnie. And Mr. Kim, I'll give you one more minute if you'd like to say any closing remarks to our viewers.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me just conclude by saying, you know, this election year is a record of, in terms of number of candidates. We have 400, I believe, close to 400, if not a little more, on the ballot. And I'm so proud of people of Hawaii, the residents of Hawaii, citizens of Hawaii, for running and putting their name on the ballot. If you're 18 years or older, you can do that, run for most offices. If you're at least 30 years old, you can run for governor, you can run for lieutenant governor. There is no other requirements other than being citizen and being able to vote. You don't have to have contacts, you don't have to have who you know. We gotta get away from who you know and making advances because who you know. You know who you are, you know what you can contribute, you know what you can offer yourself, serve the public, serve the people, and again, most importantly, leave. It's an offices that belong to the people, not to an individual or group of individuals. Thank you very much.
Mahalo, Mr. Kim. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, let's see here. Thank you, everyone. All right, so we have just a couple of announcements here before we close tonight. We're grateful for everyone joining us here and watching here and participating. So first of all, looking ahead, we are planning to hold additional candidate forums. The next one being on Thursday, July 7th. We'll be meeting with candidates for State Senate District 4, State House District 8, and County Council Districts 1 and 9, really close to home here in Waimea. And on Thursday, July 14th, we hope to meet with candidates that are seeking your vote for U.S. Senate and U.S. Representative District 2. And really for those candidates in those seats, please expect to hear from us soon. You may find more information on and criteria up on our website for those two events. And we hope that everyone can join us for those 2 evenings in July. And lastly, mahalo to my 2 board members that joined me here this evening, Lonnie Olson-Chong and Riley Smith. And of course, a big mahalo nui to all the candidates that joined us this evening and participated in tonight's call. We wish you luck in your candidacy to represent the people of Hawaii. And of course, mahalo to all of the viewers for who joined us on the live stream this evening. We hope this event was informative in helping with this decision making. And of course, this is up for you to view later at your leisure. So please enjoy it, please share it, and really get the word out there. So, and lastly, on behalf of the Waimea Community Association Board, I wish you good health, be well, and aloha. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.